Shame!
So this is something that's important for people to remember. You're engaged in two completely different enterprises when you're having a conversation with a leftist, right? You're trying to have a conversation about ideas and get to the bottom of their worldview. They're playing 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon with racism. They're trying to find some way to connect what you've said to something else that they could connect to something else that they could connect to something else that they could eventually connect to racism. That's all they're doing. And they really believe if I get to that end point where I've connected this to racism,
They've won.
I have won. What? What are you talking about? You haven't proven anything, right? You haven't made a substantive argument that's justified any of your positions. And this is something I see all the time with left-wing commentators on TikTok or on YouTube is they will very smugly play this 7 degrees of racism game in front of you while ostensibly feeling like intellectuals and looking at you smugly for saying, I can connect this practice to racism. Okay, well, that was an unbelievably thin and tenuous set of connections. But even if you want to make that argument, all right, tell me what's wrong with the idea that you're trying to refute. They'll do this thing. Well, you know, like the nuclear family has strong ties to racism because, and there's a million and one ways you can justify that in the same way that you can play 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon with basically any concept. Like if you give someone a concept, if they're rhetorically gifted enough, they can very easily link it to any other concept. That doesn't prove anything, right? That doesn't show, like, let's do this now. Give me two completely unrelated things. Like,
I don't know.
Something good and something insane. Like, let's say like
some goods like water.
Okay.
Okay, so water's good. We all need it. Something that is insane. Let's just say, I don't know, link it to murder.
Murder. Okay, so what a lot of people don't understand is that the tradition of drinking water among human beings dates just as far back as the tradition of murdering one another does. In fact, for as long as human beings have been drinking water, they've been committing crimes of murder. And one thing that water defenders who try to pretend that they're not just in favor of murder, but enjoy drinking water, don't tell you is just how many murders occur by drowning each year. And then they look at you smugly like they've accomplished something intellectually.
They done split the atom, bro. They done split that, found the Hope Diamond, man. They done figured it all out. Insane, man.
What are you talking about? But this is exactly what they'll do with racism or transphobia or homophobia. Like, well, you know, the nuclear family structure was popularized in the United States in the 1950s, around the same time that Jim Crow and segregation and other racist redlining housing policies were preventing Black people from entering suburbs. Coincidence? Like, yes, actually, yes. Coincidence. Correct. It is a coincidence.
That's exactly what it is.
There are coincidences in the world that do happen.
But
it's such a paranoid, insane way of looking at reality.
It shows just how obviously shallow these guys are because they can't find anything like incorrect with anything it is that someone else is doing unless they can connect it back to something of that nature, racism, homophobia, whatever it is. Like, so it's funny, like they like to think, let's say we talk about something more in an objective sense, like let's say a bad movie, doesn't matter what it is. You know, like you can have folks like myself and obviously me being in the commentary space, I used to do this stuff all the time back when I used to cover movies and comic books and all that stuff all the time. And it's like, I would say I'd be ahead of the curve saying this is bad, this is why. And then they'd like to think that, okay, they came, I don't know, a year after the fact saying, well, this wasn't so good, but their reasoning and saying that it wasn't so good, which they think they have the right position is because they done somehow found out the writer was racist or this message actually perpetuates this stereotype or something of that nature. So they can only find that or think that it's wrong because they can tie it back to that, because that's all their ideas trace back to. These are not reasonable people, which is why it's very difficult to argue with them because, you know, as I say all the time, you know, you can't kind of reason a person out of a position that they got to just purely based on emotion. It's impossible. It's literally impossible, which is why shame and mock, this is why I say do it, because you're more likely to appeal to their sensibilities if they have any, by doing exactly that, because it does kind of prey and pry on their emotions. But to be fair, that's how they got to the position in the line of thinking that they did anyway. It's not like they were rational people, obviously, and screaming that, I don't know, not wanting a black Little Mermaid is racist or something like that, or not thinking that's like, okay, different.